The shallow man is finally ready to talk about some of his big plays in the future. So until now, I wasn't talking about actual stocks or actual sectors. Uh, I I don't know. Have these videos been any good? I don't know. But until now, I haven't been talking that much about finance, even though finance and stocks investing was my initial interest, my core interest, right? An insecure adolescent trying to build up some kind of buffer between him and uncertainty in the world. Um, that was me. That was my interest, and I wrote articles about that. I wrote blogs. I did a lot of stuff related to that. Uh, but over time, I transitioned away from being super interested in that stuff, and I started becoming more interested in actual self improvement, real self improvement, as well as mindfulness, meditation, psychedelics, and true awareness, true awareness of reality. I wanted to get glimpses of true awareness, and I wanted to understand what reality was about. I wanted to kind of let go of the stories. Something drove me to that. But only after I felt a little bit of security with finances. So if I created this YouTube channel 10 years ago, if the shallow man created this 10 years ago, the shallow man would be talking about stocks the entire time. 10 years ago, the shallow man wasn't meditating. 10 years ago, the shallow man was not that never tried psychedelics, wasn't into self-improvement. 10 years ago, the shallow man was a completely different type of man. He wasn't a shallow man. He thought he was a deep man. Okay? But today, he knows how shallow he really is. And one of my main investments over the course of the last maybe 10, 12 years was Tesla. Tesla. I invested heavily in Tesla. I believed in Tesla. And I rode that bitch all the way up, but I made a lot of mistakes. A lot of mistakes. I wish I could go back. I wish I could go back. And I wish I could just buy the shares that I bought a, a decade ago. A decade ago. And I wish I could have just kept them and just put them away and not looked at them ever again. But I didn't do that. I speculated the wealth effect. I allowed it to impact me. My tastes increased. My desires increased. My life changed too. People came into my life and I needed to spend money on them. Other things changed in life and I had other goals. I wasn't ever going to be one of those YouTubers who just has 100,000 Tesla shares or 10,000 Tesla shares and then just or even 1,000 Tesla shares and just forgets about them. I needed money and I needed to do things, but that was a tiny portion. The other stuff, the other fuck ups that I'm talking about, came from speculation, from buying, from selling, from inappropriate using of leverage, from trying to time the market. Just nonsense, right? So imagine this beautiful 10-year wave, right? This enormous 10-year wave, and it could have transformed my entire life in terms of my wealth. I could have retired, right? Over the course of a decade, just having invested in Tesla. But I can't retire just by investing in Tesla. So even though there was this grand, enormous trajectory, I didn't manage to ride it all the way. I fucked up many times. Even though I fucked up because I was so right on Tesla, I still rode rode it pretty far, and I still got pretty far in my financial life, pretty far, but not nearly as far as I would have. There's no way I can imagine not working, not earning an income now, or being able to live completely off my investment portfolio, being able to live completely passively. There's no way. No way. That's not even in the cards for me over the next 5 to 10 years. But it could have been. I could have been retired now if I didn't fuck around. If I didn't let my emotions or my fears drive me and make me make stupid decisions. But that's the past. I've learned those lessons. And what's interesting is that when I said to myself, let me start a YouTube channel, let me see how this goes, my my initial inclination was, oh, I should do finance. I should talk about finance and money because that's what I know most about, because I have an econ degree. I have a degree in mathematical finance. I've only worked ever for financial institutions. Most of the books I've read are finance books. Most of the podcasts I've listened to are finance stuff, finance related things. For about 15 years, 20 years, I've been all in on finance since I was a kid, looking over my pop's shoulder when he was buying some random bullshit stock during the dot-com bubble in the 90s, only to have the company go bankrupt. For about 10,000 bucks, he put it all in. 10,000 bucks back then was a lot of money. It's still a lot of money in 2022. But in the late 90s, it was quite a bit more money. 10,000 bucks would have gotten you a decent down payment on a house in America. Not on a not on a house in a coastal city, not in San Francisco or LA, Miami or New York, but maybe on the outskirts of those cities, and surely in other cities like Austin and Houston and Chicago and Vegas, Arizona, all over Arizona, all over Colorado, definitely Wyoming, definitely Montana. You could have bought amazing things for 10,000 bucks. Upstate New York, New Hampshire, you could have bought crazy things, and you could have invested that money. But he did. He did invest that, but he invested in the wrong thing. And after that, my dad never invested again. Um, and I'll talk a little bit more about my dad and some of his financial mistakes that were important to my learning, my insecurities, and my kind of my approach. Okay, but strangely, I didn't. My heart wasn't into the finance thing. That's not where my heart. It wasn't driving me to do it. The thought of doing a finance YouTube channel was like, finance. Do I really want to talk about that? That seems like a job. That seems like a bore. So I didn't do that. Instead, I created Shallow Man. Right? I created Shallow Man. And I'm talking about all the things I'm interested in now. All the things I'm interested in today. Maybe 10 years from now, I'll think the same things about these things, but I hope not. Because I think going from a purely finance focus to an overall self improvement, self development focus is better. I'm interested in psychedelics. I'm interested in meditation, in true awareness, truly understanding reality for what it is. Something in me is driving me towards that. I'm also interested in health, in wellness, just being the best you can be. But I'm still so incredibly interested in finance, in wealth, in accumulating resources, productive, good resources. I'm still so interested in having power and having security and having autonomy, true autonomy and freedom. I'm still into those things. And they align so deeply with the Shallow Man mission. They align so deeply with it, so elegantly, so beautifully. But now they're just a piece of the pie. My entire existence, my entire world is not driven by the finance stuff. Although I am still a bit more into finance, more into stocks, more into investing, more into crypto than I'd like to be. I'd like to be less addicted to those things and less addicted to the checking and the thinking of them, right? A lot of concepts, a lot of symbols. And my mind's very used to those concepts and used to those symbols. It finds comfort in those things when I should be actually focused on other things, on other key, important things. But so I'm still interested in that stuff, still deeply interested in it. And I want to talk about my next big play. Tesla was my last big play, truly my only play. Maybe a little crypto, but I never went too as hard as I wanted on crypto. And all these plays are gonna hopefully seem like tiny, 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 small things compared to my next big play, because now I have a little more income. Now I have a little more income, capital, and now I have a little bit more discipline. I'm a far more disciplined investor. And when this next beautiful ride happens, in this new sector that I'm going to talk about, this wild, beautiful, crazy sector that is so strangely aligned with my interest, so surprisingly aligned with everything this channel wants to do, um, that it's kind of mind-boggling to me. It's like God put it here for me. And it seems so easy and basic as long as I can do the work. And part of doing that work is making these videos and making them interesting, making them fun, and making sure you listen to the end of it, apparently, because YouTube cares about that. YouTube cares if you listen to the end. So it's my job to make sure you listen to the end by keeping them interesting. And that's a good thing. That's an amazing thing. Because what would these videos be if no one listened? What would these videos be if you didn't want to listen to the end? What would they be if they weren't interesting? Shouldn't they be interesting? Don't we want them to be interesting? We do. And so I'm going to do my best to make them more interesting. I'm going to do my best to make them more engaging. And I hope you're going to stay along for the ride. But today, I want to talk about my next big play. And it's an amazing play. But I want to talk about something else first. And that's the fact that this is kind of like infotainment. This isn't financial advice. And I'm not a financial advisor. I don't know you. I may never know you. Maybe I will, maybe I won't. But even if I have met you, even if I did know you, my responsibility to you is very limited. Maybe I have a tiny amount of moral responsibility towards you since you're listening to me, but I surely don't have any legal or fiduciary responsibility. Now look that up. Look up fiduciary and look up fiduciary responsibility. Fiduciary responsibility. Learn that word, learn it well, and then whenever you go seek advice, ask. Ask. Do you have a fiduciary responsibility towards me? A responsibility based in law or based on some kind of statute, right? Based in law could mean based on case law. But it could also mean based on the other type of law, statute, or, past law instead of judge decided law. But there are things where you have fiduciary, fiduciaries, and you have other types of kind of legally related responsibilities, like responsibility of a doctor towards you. But a financial advisor typically has a fiduciary responsibility towards you. They have to act appropriately and in your best interest. So that's one aspect. But the bigger aspect for why you shouldn't just take my advice as just taking advice without filtering it through your own kind of understanding, your own risks, your own approach, your own operating system. The reason you shouldn't do that is because I don't know you. I can only give general advice. Now, general advice can be very useful. It can be incredibly useful. For some people, that's all you have. That's all you have. You can't get specific advice. You have to take the general variety. But for most people, and I'd argue for everyone, specific advice is useful too. And I just can't give you that. Not right now. Not over a YouTube video. So don't be a fucking moron. Don't be an idiot. Don't listen to a guy on YouTube without filtering it through your own understanding, your own conceptions, your own risk tolerance, your own habits, biases, approaches, your own goals, your own needs, your own flaws, right? Filter it for yourself, not to mention for your age, not to mention for your income, not to mention for your net worth. All those things are important and they should be considered when you're thinking about your future, right? Because what I'm about to say is risky. What I'm about to say is a risky play. It's as risky as Tesla was 10 years ago. Now, in hindsight, it doesn't seem risky, right? But only a fool or someone that's never invested in stocks could think anything related to finance could ever not be risky. Finance is risky. Finance is risky, period. Because you can't predict the future. And when you put your money on the line, your hard earned money, it's hurtful. It's painful to see it go. It's painful to lose money. So be very careful. Be very careful, ladies and gentlemen. Be prudent. Don't be a moron. If I teach you one thing on this channel, if Shallow Man could teach you one thing, is to not be a moron. Be less and less of a moron every single day. That's important. Don't be a moron. So, let's talk about this amazing play. The beauty of this play is it's less risky in a sense than a single stock play, right? Tesla was an EV sector play, but it was also a single stock play. This is a sector play. This is only a sector play. I have not identified a single stock in this sector that I love, but I've identified this sector and I love it. And in a sense, I love the sector more than I love the EV sector, more than I love Tesla, even though I'm a nerd and I enjoy Teslas and I own a Tesla and I love the car. And I'm in love with what Musk is doing. I think he's a good benevolent creature. I'm amazed by him, right? So what's the sector? Let me tell you the sector. So let me see. Let me check something on my phone. Excuse me here. So the sector is going to be a wild sector. Right? I'll tell you about it right now. So, what do you think the sector is going to be? What's this channel about? The sector is psychedelic medicine. That's the sector. And I'm looking at all the beautiful companies that are just starting out, just being born. Companies like Field Trip Health, like Cybin, like Mind Medicine, Compass Pathways, Atai, and even some of the bigger players like AbbVie who are getting into the space, but they're not the same as the other ones because those are really low market cap companies. Those are really brand new, low market cap companies. Take Field Trip, for example. Field Trip Health. It's traded on the NASDAQ. It's headquartered in Toronto, Canada for now. It's also traded on the Canadian Stock Exchange. Field Trip, you know the market cap? It's about $100 million. $100 fucking million Canadian. Could you could you find a better deal? It's almost like stealing in a way, if you believe in the sector. Now, if you're like the Tesla bears who were yapping in the tens all throughout the 2010s, if you're like them and you just care about current revenue, then none of these players are going to seem interesting except maybe Johnson and Johnson, AbbVie, and some of these larger players that are starting to get into the psychedelic space, but their valuations are high. I'm talking about these really new companies, and I'm going to have so much to say on this. I'm going to have so much to say. I'm realizing now on the fact that it's low risk because it's a sector play, that they're so different. The approach, psychedelic stocks and psychedelic businesses and everything about this is so different. So different than the way cannabis worked. The legalization of cannabis and the commercialization of cannabis with stocks like MedMen and Tilray. That's We hope psychedelics don't go that route from a business perspective, right? It's not that great. Retail, dude, no. It's gonna be a different approach, and there's obviously pluses and minuses to it, but from an investing standpoint, it's a much better approach um, than the cannabis sector went. But what I love is that I can invest, but also I'm investing in something I believe in, something I know. What better research for a psychedelic therapy company like Field Trip Health that provides literally provides psychedelic assisted therapy, psychedelic integration, and an application for tripping out, an application to log and to get data from your trip, right? So what kind of data would you get from your trip? So obviously, if you have an arm monitor or a blood monitor, you can get a lot of bio data, biomarkers, biological related data. You can get a lot of textual data if you're like yapping with your app. If you say, "Oh, this is something that I'm thinking about," or you write it down, or there's surveys for your mood. So that data is being captured now too, and so that's what Field Trip is doing. It's a complete package. They're creating their own drug. They are creating their own clinic. In fact, they have like 10 clinics all over the world now in Houston, Los Angeles, Amsterdam, Chicago. They have clinics right now where you can go in and do ketamine assisted psychedelic therapy, which it's not really psychedelic assisted therapy, is it? Because ketamine's not a real psychedelic. But once psilocybin is legalized, once LSD is legalized, once all these factors come together over the next 10 to 15 years, you're going to have these companies. I think, and again, don't be a fucking moron. Don't listen to a guy on YouTube. This is my prediction for my portfolio. This is entertainment, not a lecture, and it's not advice for sure. But I think these companies are easily going to 100x. Easily 100x from $100 million company to what? A $10 million, $10 billion company? Easily can happen. Easily Field Trip could be 10 billion. And I don't need to fuck around with Excel spreadsheets. I don't need to do that nonsense. because it's so basic. It's so intense. But we're still going to do the Excel spreadsheets anyways because we need to be rigorous and robust. You got to be rigorous and robust, or you're asking for some serious capital losses. You're asking for it if you're not rigorous and robust. But I'm just so incredibly excited about this opportunity, and I'm so excited to bring this message to everyone. I'm going to be doing hundreds of videos over the next 5 years, 10 years, hundreds, thousands of videos on these topics, analyzing every single company, thinking about every single company, both from a qualitative and a quantitative perspective. I'm going to try to expand this channel. I'm going to do my best to make it super interesting. And I'm going to be talking about why I think the next big opportunity over the next decade or 2 decades, the next generational wealth opportunity is going to be in these stocks, in psychedelic stocks, psychedelic development, whether it be developing new drugs, getting FDA approval, like developing new synthetic drugs based on the traditional psychedelics, developing getting FDA approval for the classic drugs like simple psilocybin, and then delivering those drugs in good settings and in good therapies, useful therapies. I mean, we know how terrible mental health is in the U.S. That's another way this ties into my channel. I'm stunned at how well this ties into my channel. I'm really surprised. It's as if it's not even my doing. It just kind of happened to me, and I'm just a conduit. I feel like I'm a conduit for this message. So look at what's happening. Everyone's miserable. The world's miserable. We have serious mental health issues. These drugs can actually like help people for real instead of the current suite of mental health drugs we have now. Mainly, what are they? What's the current thing? Serotonin reuptake inhibitors, SSRIs. Serotonin. Let's analyze that. Serotonin reuptake inhibitors. So serotonin, that's the chemical in your brain that makes you feel, I think, good, makes you want things. It's a good chemical, important chemical. You want it. Serotonin reuptake. What does that mean? So I don't know. Something's being taken up. Reuptake, right? It's like getting absorbed into the body. It's going away, right? Inhibitors. It's inhibiting it. What's it inhibiting? It's inhibiting the reuptake of what? Of serotonin. Right? So I give you this pill, take the pill. Good boy, good girl. What's gonna happen inside you now? What's gonna happen? The reuptake of serotonin is gonna be inhibited. What the psychedelics do, most of them, is they have another substance that fits even more perfectly into your brain than serotonin does, into the serotonin receptors. So your brain has serotonin receptors. Serotonin fits pretty well. There are substances that fit even better, an even tighter fit, an incredibly tight fit that lasts for quite a while. And there's no reuptake inhibiting anything. No, we're just flooding your brain with this beautiful, amazing chemical called serotonin, or something similar, a similar type of chemical that gets into those receptors and sticks on. It's going to change mental health completely. It's going to completely change mental health to the point that we think that, you know, SSRIs are going to be thought of as same thing as bloodletting. Same as bloodletting. Right now, if you talk about bloodletting, where the practice of a doctor cutting someone and letting their blood out because they thought that that's how you cure people. They truly thought that. I'm not going to go into detail about that, but they truly thought that that's what you would learn in medical school. Well, now we know that that's not the way to go. That's how you kill people, right? Bad, bad. In the same way, we're going to say, hey, why were we giving these drugs to people? Why are we giving serotonin reuptake inhibitors to people? It's going to be such a different path. Not different in quality, but different in kind. Not a little different, but totally different, right? Not 5 degrees off, but 180 degrees, going exactly the opposite way. That's what psychedelic medicines are going to deliver. And I want to be a part of that. I want to be a part of that to make money. I want more money and I want to make money on these things, but it's also something I could believe in, something I can be proud of, something I could deeply believe in. And my risk is incredibly mitigated because this type of investment, the type of investment where you deeply believe in it and deeply understand it, that type of investment is the lowest risk investment of them all. That's what Warren Buffett says, and that's what I believe. Diversification, yeah, it's good for dummies who want to decrease their risk. But if you really want to decrease your risk, invest in a great company that you're sure is a great company. Now, the finance guy in me, the economist in me, the guy who was trained in, formal academic finance wants to say no, that's not true. But none of the professors in formal academic finance, none of them are making big plays, and none of them are wealthy. They're all middling, diversified middling profs. That's all they are. We want to be something more here.